Hi folks, Wooden Boat Dan here. Just wanted to give you a heads up. The podcast you're about to listen to was recorded several years ago, so some of the phone numbers, email addresses, website links, and time-sensitive information are no longer valid. Please keep that in mind as you listen. If you'd like to contact me, my email address is woodenboatdan@gmail.com. Thank you and enjoy the podcast. Welcome to Hooked on Wooden Boats weekly podcast episode number 23. I am your host, Dan Matson, and this is the world's very first podcast fully dedicated to celebrating the art, craft, history, and tradition of wooden boats of all sizes, shapes, colors, varnishes, dimensions, displacements, styles, construction methods, and wood species. Boy, that was a mouthful. Welcome to the show. Glad that you're here with me today. Well, you're not really here with me, but you are listening to my podcast. If you were with me, you'd be sitting in my office in Arlington, Washington, looking out at the cloud-covered mountains. From my office, I can see the Cascade Mountains, Mount Pilchuck, which is about 5,000 feet, and a couple other peaks that are 5,000 to 6,000 feet, so that's pretty fun. Today's featured segment is an interview with Julia Maynard. Julia is co-owner with Stephen Gale of Haven Boatworks in Port Townsend, Washington. It was formerly Baird Boatworks, owned by Ernie Baird. Julia's got a great story to share about what they do there at the shop and some of her adventures in wooden boats, so be sure and stick around for that. Got a few announcements and a couple items I wanted to cover first. First thing I wanted to say was that the music that I use for my introduction and my outroduction, if you will, let me use that word even though it's not a real word, is music from a song that my wife and I heard in the 80s from a Christian artist by the name of Bob Cull, C-U-L-L. And back in the 80s, Tam and I had a couple of his albums and really enjoyed them. And I always enjoyed this sea shanty song that he had on there. So when I was setting up my podcast last September, I thought, I want some good music on here, something that's unique, that's kind of a sea theme. And so I remembered that song from Bob Cull, and I didn't have the cassette tape anymore. That's how old it was. It was on a cassette back in the 80s. So I went on the internet and I found Bob, that he's pastoring a church back in Maine, and he had his albums online with the music there. And so I went online and I copied off that song, and on the website it said, share this music kind of thing. So I copied the song, and I've taken those excerpts from the beginning and the end of the song and have been using them on my podcast since the very beginning, back last September. But in the back of my mind, I always thought, I really need to get permission from Bob to do this. I think that's the right thing to do. So I emailed Bob, and I've never really met Bob. I've heard him in concert years ago. And I emailed him and said, Bob, I have a podcast about wooden boats, and I've been using your music. One of your songs is Sea Shanty Jig, I think it's called, at the beginning and end of my show, and I've never asked for permission. So can I have permission, please, since I've already been doing it? And if you don't want me to, I won't. So by golly, the next day I got an email from Bob, and Bob said, "Sure, Dan, you're welcome to use this song. It fits perfectly. Thanks for asking. I am sailing in Maine every chance I get, but the season is so short out here." I forgot to mention a little earlier that Bob was a big sailor here in the Pacific Northwest, had a sailboat and wrote his songs about sailing. Anyway, back to the email. He says, "It's a beautiful coastline here, but very rocky and shallow compared to the Northwest where I lived for so long. I have to haul out the boat each winter since the harbor freezes solid. I keep my gaff-rigged catboat called Artichoke he says picture attached, in a small marina in South Bristol, Maine called Gamage Shipyard. And then he says, but I bought the boat from the Wooden Boat Center in Seattle and had her trucked out when I moved here in 1997. If you can possibly get out to Mystic, you simply must. It is the Jerusalem of wooden boat lovers. But the coast of Maine is a place to see and sail. I'm looking at my window at a frozen lake and snow as I write this, and I'm feeling really antsy for spring, which won't come to Maine until May. Blessings to you, Dan. Thanks for the links, Bob. So that was pretty cool. I was pretty excited about that. I got permission, and it turns out Bob's a wooden boat guy. He's got a beautiful cat boat. And I'm going to go ahead and put a link on the website. I'm going to put some photos on the website of his boat. It's called Artichoke. It's a gorgeous boat. And then I'm going to put a link to his website where he's got some of his music and stuff if you want to look at that. So anyway, the only other thing I would be interested from Bob is what the history of his boat is, who built it, and all that sort of thing. So I'm going to ask him all that information. Okay, so thanks, Bob, for letting me use your music. It fits great. I love it. And thanks for emailing me back. Well, I'm making some progress on my canoe. It's a little bit slow, but there's 5, 10, there's 20 planks to cut out. And so there are 20 half planks. And I've got the templates cut. I've got all 4 of each plank cut. Now I just have to plane them down, get them nice and fair and shaped up to what they're supposed to be, and then I'll start scarfing. So hopefully I'll be doing some scarfing next week and be epoxying these pieces end to end, since they're unilateral's not the word I'm thinking of, and uniform's not either. Symmetrical from end to end. The boat is symmetrical. So I'm having fun with that, and get down in the shop, and it's just kind of forget about time, hang out there, and just do what you love to do. I did also get another email from Anders, who said he listened to episode 22 today and almost hit my head on the garboard when I heard my name being mentioned. Last week I mentioned Anders, who's building a John Welsford design walkabout, and he's been listening to all my shows, so that's pretty cool. So welcome back, Anders. Good to have you again, listening in from Poland. I would love it if you would connect with me on Facebook or Twitter. You can look me up under Wooden Boat Dan. My website is hookedonwoodenboats.com. You can email me at dan@hookedonwoodenboats.com, or you can call my feedback voicemail hotline, 424-261-2360. And the other thing you can do on my website, you can subscribe to my email list. And if you do that, then I send out an article or a video or something of interest in the wooden boat world about once or twice a month. For instance, yesterday I just sent out a 4-minute video clip of a really cool preview of a movie that's coming out soon called Wood Sails Dreams. It's all about wooden boats and the resurgence of wooden boats since the 70s. Really cool preview. So I sent that out to my email subscription list. So if you'd like to subscribe, you can go to hookedonwoodenboats.com/subscribe. Okay, I think that's it for the introduction and news this week. Hope you're having a great week. We're going to move on now to the interview. This is with Julia Maynard of Haven Boatworks. She's a co-owner with Stephen Gale. And let's roll the interview. Take it away, Julia. Before we start the interview, I just wanted to mention again that most of the interviews I do are inside of a boatyard or inside of a boat, so there is background noise. I try to get it as clear as possible. This interview I did with Julia, we were actually standing on scaffolding, covered scaffolding next to a 48-foot wooden cruiser, have my little tripod set up there on a sawhorse, so maybe a little wind or something in the background, but I think you can hear the interview pretty well. So I hope you enjoy it. Let's start it. Okay, it's February 14th, and I am in Port Townsend, Washington with Julia Maynard, and we're at Haven Boatworks, which you're the co-owner of that. Is that right, Julia?
That's correct.
Yeah, so welcome to the show today.
Thanks.
Yeah, we just took a little tour and looked at some of the boats they're working on. So, Julia, tell me, where are you from?
Originally from the East Coast, and moved out here when I came to college.
Okay.
And went to Evergreen and Olympia, and that's where I got into my boat background, actually.
Okay. Did you do any boating as a kid?
No.
Really?
And I didn't start until I was in college, actually. But just got interested in it because of a program that had been run at Evergreen State College years ago.
And what was that program?
It was called Marine History and Crafts, or Marine Studies and Crafts, and it was part of a integrated study program where they had I was interested in marine biology and marine history, but part of that program was the design and construction of a boat.
Okay.
Which is actually here in the harbor called Seawolf now.
Oh, really?
It was launched eventually, but the school put together this program to put this. They wanted to end up with a research vessel. And so we did design, construction, and I learned all about that as part of it was just part of the program.
Wow. So I remember Evergreen College as the first school in the state that didn't, with a non-grading system, pass-fail system, right? Yeah. It was really cutting edge
It was cutting edge, and I liked it. I mean, for me, that's how I ended up figuring out what I was going to do with my life, basically.
Yeah. So you went through that program. How long was that program?
Well, it was basically one year, but there were a number of these marine programs that got run, and there were 3 of them that I did. 3 out of the 4 years involved
at that school.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it wasn't necessarily just that one boat project, but it was a series of combination boat building, boat design, and also marine biology and marine studies, marine literature of the sea. It was everything was kind of directed in that way.
Yeah. So what was your major then?
Well, at that time, Evergreen only had a liberal arts.
Okay, so it was just degree. A generic liberal arts degree, huh?
Yeah. But it was very interesting, and they pulled in really interesting people not necessarily the professors at the school, but people from the outside that came in and taught parts of the program. Was it all wooden boat based, or mostly? It was, huh? Yeah. And you mentioned earlier that Bob Perry was there. He's a designer in Seattle. Yeah, and at that time he was not a famous yacht designer, really. Really? And it was new. Yeah. So it was in the mid 70s. So that's where you kind of got hooked on boats. I got hooked on it there, and then I ended up in the course of that, because I was pretty interested in lofting and drawing, and I ended up working for John Gardner at Mystic Seaport in Connecticut. Oh, you did? Yeah. And I worked there. I apprenticed to him for a year. Cool. Right after, he asked, actually. I kind of expressed an interest and knew that there was a missing person in that, so I did that. Okay. I built Gardner's 14-foot semi-dory. Yeah, I saw that. Did you? So. Okay, yeah. Wow, so you apprenticed under John. Yeah. That must have been pretty cool. Yep, it was. What kind of guy was he? He was a character. Really? Yeah. So, yeah, he was a neat guy. Yeah, so did you build some dories then? No, well, I did for myself. I built a dory, and I built the little dinghy that went on deck of the Brilliant, schooner Brilliant. Okay. And it had been rotten, and so I took the lines off the old one, drew up the plans, and then built the boat. Okay. And actually, I got into finish work there. Oh, really? Yeah, and it was because I had to do the finish on that boat because project ended a little bit later than they wanted it to be ready for the season, so I ended up putting the finish on it, and I got instructions from the guy who was the mate, who usually did the varnish work and paint work on it.
Yeah.
And I learned a lot from him on how to do that.
So
it is eventually what I ended up doing for a living. I couldn't make money at all. And
really?
I certainly didn't have any rich uncles or anything, so I was going to have to make a living, and it's the reason I didn't stay. Yeah, I couldn't stay working at Mystic Seaport because I couldn't afford it.
Oh, really?
Live on the pay I had.
Yeah. Okay. So you were there for a year?
Yeah.
And then what'd you do after that?
I went back and forth across country and ended up. Eventually, it was kind of when the economy was not in the best of shape. I ended up in California, and with my soon-to-be husband, actually, and I ran a finishing business in California.
You did?
Yeah, and
for boats.
For boats.
Yeah.
And so I did that, and we bought property up here. We really wanted to be up here.
In Port Townsend area?
Well, it was in Brennan.
Okay.
And we built a shop. We did this. We would go 6 months on, 6 months off.
Oh, really?
Working, well, actually it was more like 8 months working and 4 months on what we eventually built a boat. And actually you might be familiar with the boat at Zulu.
I am familiar with that, yeah. So tell me about that build.
Yeah, well, we spent 6 years part-time building that boat.
Really? Yeah.
And eventually...
Now, was that a sloop rigged?
No, it was a yawl.
A yawl rig, huh? Okay. And what length of boat was it?
34 on deck. And,
yeah.
Anyway, and then we built it and then launched it. We were around here for about 5 years messing around with it, and then we took off across the Pacific with it.
Wow. So give me a few highlights of that trip.
Oh, it was great.
Tell me a couple fun things that happened.
Oh, I don't know. Just
think of any offhand?
Well, I mean, it just was a great trip. I mean, I was really happy I got to build a boat and take off and sail it somewhere, and that was
so you sailed
cool.
Out of this area here.
Yeah, and we went down. We spent a year in the Bay Area because we were always tight on money, so we spent a year there because we realized that once we got down there, we didn't have the money to just keep going. Then we went down to Mexico. We ended up 3 years in Mexico, coming back and forth, leaving the boat in Mexico, and then we took off, sailed to Raiatea, which that actually I could say was a highlight. Is we ended up 6 months in mid-Pacific, or actually the boat was there for longer, anyway. So that was the.
Where was that? You say Raiatea?
Raiatea. It's west of Tahiti.
Oh, okay.
And so on this little island, they had a place we could haul the boat out of the water and leave it for 6 months. And we had to leave the country, leave French Polynesia for 6 months.
Oh.
And then we came back. But we were there for 3 months and then came back and spent another couple months getting the boat ready to continue across the Pacific.
And then where did you go after that?
Well, we went to Cook Islands, a little island called Niue, then Tonga, Fiji, New Caledonia, and for the next cyclone season we were in Australia. And then we went up, we spent 5 months going up the Barrier Reef and down.
Oh, cool.
So that was also a very neat trip. My husband had done that trip before in the course of a circumnavigation, but he had to rush through the Barrier Reef, so we took our time.
Oh, cool.
And then we eventually shipped the boat back here because my husband's a bit older than I am, really felt we both were, I wasn't going to do it without him.
Yeah.
Or having an extra crew on the boat. So we both felt, okay, it's time to stop.
I see. Okay.
And so we shipped the boat back here and then sold it. But we sailed it.
Sell it, huh?
Yeah, and that's the guy who owns it now has taken off. He's in Mexico with the boat. He works for the Center for Wooden Boats.
Oh, really? What's his
name? Brian, what's his last name? Magliozzi.
Okay.
And he was involved with it. Yeah, he's down in Mexico with it. And he's going to, last I heard, he was going to go to the Marquesas, Hawaii, and back here, and then eventually take off a couple of more years down the road with the boat. So I'm glad to hear he's enjoying it.
Yeah, really. So what year did you finish that boat?
In 92.
92, and then how long was your trip start to finish with all the
97 to 2005.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That wasn't that long ago.
No.
Wow. Did you take a lot of pictures?
Yeah.
Really?
Of course, we haven't shown them to anybody. That's all right. I enjoyed looking at them on my computer. So.
Yeah, right. So you got into the finishing end, so that's your specialty, really?
It really is. I mean, I can do the woodworking, and I really like it, but I kept it as a hobby.
Yeah.
And it was, in here, this is more repair work that we end up doing here. And what I had learned was new boat construction, which is a little bit different, I have to say. It's more, and in many ways, this is much more complicated to do, to figure out how to do the repair. But I know the whole construction of a boat just because I have a lot of background.
Right. So your co-owners was Stephen Gale.
Yeah.
And did you buy out Ernie Baird in 2004, or what happened?
No, actually, a number of the partners ended up. I mean, it wasn't necessarily a buyout. That wasn't quite how it worked.
Yeah.
But a number of them got together, took over the business, changed the business name, and they gradually, one by one, kind of left to, just went on their own. And, some of them just went on to other things. One retired. And so Stephen asked if I was interested in assisting with running the business.
Okay.
And at that time, I was working as an employee, just doing finished work.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
We got along really well. So.
What year was that?
That was 2008.
2000. Oh, okay.
Yeah, the end of 2007, very end of 2007.
Yeah. Okay. So, tell me about. Do you know much about Ernie Baird, who owned this?
Oh,
before?
yeah.
What can you give me just a brief synopsis of his? Was he here a long time?
Well, he was in 1989, which is when I knew him from. Just a little bit before that, he built this facility.
Okay.
And he had been running a business right across in what was the funky boatyard across the way, and just doing odd jobs. But he was determined to work for fishermen, and he ended up doing some yacht work.
Oh,
my husband worked for him.
Boats.
Yeah, and I worked for him too.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Okay.
I do periodic finish work jobs. I actually did one planking job actually on one boat. It was right after the Hadlock Marina blew out, and he just was short on help.
Okay.
So my husband worked for him a lot, and for up until I guess probably the last time he worked on it, we were away on the boat, so it would have been 98 or 99. But I continued to do periodic finish jobs for him.
I see.
When he had people here that could do it, but when it got to be too much work, I'd come in and assist. And so I worked for him too.
Okay. So his specialty was kind of fishing boats.
It was yachts. I mean, it was this kind of work
restoration and
right
repair
now.
type of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he'd worked for the Boatworks, then quit, went out on his own.
Yeah. Okay. So tell me a little bit more about Haven Boatworks. What type of work you guys look for, and if we have people listening that are interested in having you do something, tell us what you do here.
Well, we do a lot of wood repair, and would be with the crew we have here right now. We certainly could build a boat from scratch. We've got excellent shipwrights working here, and they're really good at very clever repairs and tricky ones. So that's part of it. We were also got a metal shop at this point. And, we can do any of the metalwork repairs that need to be done.
Okay.
And this fiberglassing, we have a certain amount of that. House tops end up glassed. Occasionally decks end up glassed. And we can do any kind of finish job, basically.
Yeah. All kinds of stuff.
Yeah, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah. Small to big boats.
Small to big.
You work on small stuff too?
Oh, yeah.
Do you? Okay.
Yeah. And sometimes it's really welcome after a really large project.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah.
And we've done the 3 years. This is the third year of restoration work on that adventurous project, and some of those parts of that were real big. We put new stem on that boat, and a lot of new planking and new framing, new horn timber, new rudder.
Wow.
And some new decking back aft.
That boat was built in 1913?
Yeah. So they're in their centennial restoration, the idea.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And they're hoping for nice big funds, to help finish the project.
Yeah, because that's part of a non-profit organization, isn't it?
Yeah, it's Sound Experience.
Sound Experience, okay. Yeah. What's the rig on that boat?
It's a schooner rig.
It is a schooner rig, yeah. There's only one mast on it right now, though.
Yeah, well, the other one's being worked on.
Yeah, I figured that. Yeah. He looked at it and said, well, okay, where's the other mast?
It's on the ground right next to the boat.
Yeah. So what's your favorite boat project you've worked on all time? Or one of your couple favorite?
Well, my own boat.
Yeah, your own boat, obviously.
And that helped.
Yeah.
But actually, as far as Haven Boatworks, probably Vintage was a really good one. And
Vintage?
And that was a Concordia Yawl that we worked on 2007, 2008. And the boat comes back every year, but it was a complete restoration of that boat.
Really?
And that was the completeness of that, and the owner being really open to finishing it out just so.
Okay.
It was kind of what he wanted, and the restoration was pretty much no expense spared, and that really made quite a difference. So that's kind of a favorite of mine, just for that reason.
Yeah. Did you do all the finish work on it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Was there a lot of bright work?
Yeah, a lot of bright work.
Okay.
And it was a lot of new bright work, too, because the house was all new, the cockpit was all new. Down below was refinished, but it was completely refinished inside and out. So that tends to be a favorite of mine. But
yeah, very cool. Yeah. So what's the secret to doing good bright work, Julia?
A lot of patience.
A lot of patience?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
You still use traditional products?
Oh, yeah.
Spar varnish, captain's varnish, that type of thing?
Well, it's Epiphanes is my favorite.
Epiphanes, yeah.
It's thicker.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Yeah. What about some of the new products that are, more environmentally friendly and all that stuff? Is there anything good out there?
I don't know. And I'm hesitant to try, really. I mean, I think with bottom paints on something other than wooden boats, I would go for it. And we don't only work on wooden boats. We work on fiberglass and metal and whatever. So we do some bottom jobs. And on those boats, I would happily recommend one of these environmentally friendly paints.
Yeah.
But with a wood boat, they haven't figured out yet whether it's going to keep Doritos out of the bottom of a boat.
Oh.
And until they do, I'm too afraid to really make a commitment that way.
Yeah, right.
I'm hoping by the time they ban it in Washington, which is supposedly not very many years down the road, I'm either retired, so I don't have to answer this, or they figure something out that actually does work.
Yeah. How many coats of varnish you typically put on a bright work finish?
8 to 10.
8 to 10.
Brand new. That's only got about 4 on there. And in fact, hasn't been really sanded yet. Got its good hard sand.
Yeah.
Which happens next.
Yeah. So, do you do any boating these days personally? Get out on the water?
Not often.
Really?
But some. I have a friend who has an International 210. I like to go out sailing on that.
Yeah.
And occasional offers to go out on Alcyon, which is fun.
Mm-hmm.
And,
you own any boats yourself? Any little boats or anything?
A dinghy. Our dinghy off our boat, that's it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool.
And actually, it's fine. It's about all I can take care of at this point.
Really? Yeah. Yeah.
Taking care of everybody else's boat rather than
rather than your own, huh?
Yeah, and actually I'm glad our boat sold when it did, because I couldn't run this business and take care of that boat. Yeah, that boat needed, it just, if you want to keep it nice, you got to keep on it.
Right. Yeah.
That's what it's all about, maintenance.
Yeah. You stay on top of it, you prevent a lot of problems,
Oh, you sure do.
That's kind of the name of the game?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
And as long as we owned that boat, actually I was gratified to see it here. I hadn't seen it for 3 years or so. And seeing it here this last summer, right before the people that own it left, said they're taking care of it too. So that made
cool.
me feel good.
Yeah, very cool. So what's your contact information here, Julie, if somebody wants to get a hold of you?
Email address is probably the best.
Okay.
And phone.
What's the email address?
It's mail@havenboatworks.com.
Okay. All right. And phone number?
Phone number is 360-385-5727.
Okay. And havenboatworks is .com is the website?
Yes.
Okay. Very cool.
And all the contact information's on that too.
Yeah. All right. And any parting comments for our listeners today?
No,
words of advice or words of wisdom if they own a wooden boat?
Come and have your work done here.
Yeah, okay. Very good.
So.
All right, well, thanks for your time, Julia.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
Yeah. Julius, thanks so much for taking the time to let me interview you. That was a lot of fun. You guys are doing some really cool stuff there. And thanks again. I really appreciate it. I'm going to post some pictures on the website with the show notes of some of the boats that you have that you're working on there. And I hope everybody enjoys that. One other thing I wanted to mention that happened last week on Wednesday, I was in Anacortes, Washington for a business lunch at the marina there. Haven't been to that marina very much for quite a few years, but I thought after I ate lunch I would go down and look for wooden boats, which I typically do. And boy, there's a lot of white plastic out there. But what I found, if I go to the commercial fishing section or ramp or moorage area, typically there'll be some wooden boats there. So I went down, and sure enough, I found 3 or 4 wooden boats, and there was one boat, I think it was a purse seiner. It was a gorgeous boat, very well maintained, had some bright work on it. It was a caravel planked, probably 40 or 50 footer, all set up for fishing, commercial fishing, and I took a couple pictures of it. When I got home, actually the next day, Wooden Boat magazine came in the mail, and it was issue number 225, and I started to read it, and I got to page 13, and the bottom right-hand corner, there's a model that Ed Gardner built of the purse seiner Veteran. And by golly, it's the same boat that I just seen that day. Now, it looks like the boat's been painted since this model was built. But also, I found out also from Pat Lown, L-O-W-N, from Wooden Boat magazine. And Pat's my first subscriber from Wooden Boat magazine. He actually works there in the library and does research. And he turned me on to the Wooden Boat Index, and the Veteran is in their Wooden Boat Index, and it's the same boat that I saw in Anacortes that day, so that was pretty fun. And I'm going to put a picture of the Veteran up on the website also. One of these days I want to get up and interview the owner of that boat. Well, I think that's it for this week, folks. Hope you enjoyed the show. As usual, please connect with me if you can. Email dan@hookedonwoodenboats.com, or put a comment on one of my blogs. And for each podcast that I record, I write a short blog about it and post pictures on my website, hookedonwoodenboats.com, so be sure and check that out. Or you can call my voicemail feedback hotline, 424-261-2360. Until next week, keep the sunny side up and the barnacled side down. This is Wooden Boat Dan, over and out. Have a great week. We'll chat again next week about the most exciting thing in life, wooden boats.